pre-ordered it. Yes, I do. So I actually brought it.
You published his last book.
It is. I love this city. Yeah.
Did you get it yesterday or like
Really late.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for being here. Chag Sameach. It is really very special to have you all in this space. My name is Rabbi Matt Green. I'm one of the directors of this space, the Center for New Jewish Culture, which is many different things. I just want to ground us for a moment in where we are on this bizarre bima of this abandoned synagogue. We are currently sitting in one of the oldest synagogues in Brooklyn, and it was for almost 100 years known as Union Temple, the Union Temple of Brooklyn. And this space was founded 100 years ago to be a place of experimentation for American Jews to figure out what it means to be both Jewish and American at once. And over the years, it has been a sanctuary, it has been a theater, it has been a comedy venue, it has been many different things. But in the very near future, we are inaugurating this space as something called the Center for New Jewish Culture, which is a place for us to figure out together what it means to be Jewish right now. And it is in that spirit that we are tonight hosting this reading, this gathering. It is also, of course, Sukkot. And so you may hear the sounds of children outside playing in the sukkah, maybe being somewhat obnoxious, I don't know. But it is in time really an opportunity for us to think about impermanence and all that isn't here forever. This building indeed won't be here forever, but it has been here for 100 years. And I want to encourage you as you are thinking about some of the words that you're about to hear, I want to encourage you to think about what might have been in this very space over the past 100 years, especially as you look beyond this screen to this bima, which is a carbon copy of a synagogue in Essen, Germany that was destroyed by the Nazis in 1940. Think about all that has been and all that could be. That is my only invitation for you here tonight as you settle into the Center for New Jewish Culture. And now I want to introduce properly Tom Haviv, who is the co-founder and director, one of the directors of Ayin Press. A dear friend, please join me in welcoming Tom Haviv.
Hello. Thank you so much for coming today to celebrate Daniela's new book and the poetry of Erika Meitner and be in this very inspiring and strange space that Matt is in the process of transforming and stewarding into many new chapters. As Matt mentioned, I am the co-founder of Ayin. Ayin was founded in 2020 as a publisher and cultural institution focusing on avant-garde work coming from many different communities. Our founding line was Ayin is rooted in Jewish culture and emanating outward. That is a very broad statement, vague statement that meant to say we're very interested in stewarding and connecting many different siloed communities and siloed disciplines. And so over the years, we've published online, we've published children's books, we've published poetry, we've published nonfiction and audio, and we're also evolving into what it would be for the next years to come as a cultural institution, supporting artists for the long term to do ambitious work. And from the beginning, my co-founder and I are all bonded over experimental poetry, walking on Eastern Parkway, and it's a deep pleasure to continue to support and celebrate poetry and an honor to publish this powerful and important book by Daniela. I am realizing that I left everything in my pocket over there. I'm going to read a little bit about the book. The book is called Protocols, and Erasure. I'm going to read the book description. An urgent, poetic exploration of power, memory, belief, and the dangers and possibilities of language. Protocols and Erasure transforms the world's most influential anti-Semitic document, the Protocols of the Elders of Zion, into an erasure poem exploring essential questions of power, history, and language. By redacting words from the original document, Molnar created a book-length poem that breathes space and light into a text dense with hatred. She patiently uncovers the questions buried within the source text. What is the true nature of power, and how is it tied to a fear of the unknown? How can language weaponized and eroded also be a tool for healing? And how can silence help us reckon with history and shape the future? Accompanying the poem, a lyric essay excavates the poet's deep personal connection to the source text, weaving personal and collective history by traversing former concentration camps, immigrant communities in New York City, and remote desert wildernesses, and posing new possibilities for a less deterministic, more spacious, and peaceful world. I'm gonna let that sit. Now the bios. Daniela Molnar is a poet, artist, and writer who creates with color, water, language, and place. Her paintings are created with pigments she has made from plants, bones, stones, rainwater, and glacial melt. Poems and essays are created alongside the pigments and paintings. The practices overlap and influence each other, creating new ecologies. Her book, Chorus, won the 2024 Oregon Book Award for Poetry. Protocols and Erasure was published by Ayin in June of 2025. Forthcoming books include Memory of a Larger Mind, a book written in collaboration with Glaciers from Omni Dawn, October 2026. And Light Remains, a book of visual art, poems, and essays. Her work is the subject of a front page feature in the Los Angeles Times, a PBS Oregon Art Beat profile, an entry into the Oregon Encyclopedia, and a feature in Poetry Daily. Her artwork has been shown nationally, is in public and private collections internationally, and has been recognized by numerous grants, fellowships, residencies. She's very accomplished. She founded the Art and Ecology program at the Pacific Northwest College of Art and helped start and run the backcountry artist residency Signal Fire from 2008 to 2022. She lives in Portland, Oregon, where the forest meets the city. Another accomplished poet is Erika Meitner. Erika is the author of 6 books of poems, including Ideal Cities, Harper Perennial 2010, a 2009 National Poetry Series winner, Holy Moly Carry Me by Boa Editions 2018, winner of the 2018 National Jewish Book Award, and the finalist for the National Book Critics Award in Poetry, and Useful Junk, Boa Editions 2022. Her poems have been published most recently in The New Yorker, Electric Literature, Virginia Quarterly Review, Oxford American, The New Republic, Orion, and elsewhere. Her 7th book, Assembled Audience, is due out from Milkweed Editions in 2026. Meitner is currently a professor of English at the University of Wisconsin-Madison, where she also directs the creative writing program. Join me in welcoming them both. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, Tom. Thank you, Matt. Can you all hear me? We're recording this, so this is also so that people not here can hear us. Thank you, everyone who made this event possible, and thank you all for coming out to this spot. I've never been in this building before, and it's really unique. The stained glass alone could occupy me for a long time. I'm really grateful to Erika for joining me in this event. I have had a poetry crush on Erika for many years, and it was a grand honor to reach out to this person I've never met and just be like, I really like what you do. Will you do this with me? And for her to say yes. So thank you, Erika. I'm going to talk a little bit about the context of the book, hence the slides, and then I'm going to read a little bit from the book, and then Erika and I will Erika will read some poems, we'll speak for a bit, and then we can, if there's any questions from everybody. So, I've given versions of this talk a few times now, several times, perhaps a dozen, and often in very different contexts. And I feel like here probably more people know the context of the Protocols of the Elders of Zion, so I'm going to move a little bit faster through it. But what you're looking at here is 2 pages from the book, and this is just a really, really small selection of copies of the Protocols of the Elders of Zion. It's sometimes called the Jewish Peril, it's sometimes called other things, but it is a book that is, I refer to it in my book as this zombie that's just refusing to die. It has a life of its own. It's been debunked in courts, it's been debunked by journalists in countless countries in countless different ways. There's nothing accurate about it, and yet it continues to live. And that is sort of the way of conspiracy theories, that the more you prove them false, the more power they gain. Because when you prove it false, that's just like the people in control proving it false, which gives it more power. So the Protocols is still widely distributed. It's still in some school curriculums. It's certainly very easily available online. I dug into the research of this document in the process of writing the book and discovered, I knew that it was false, and I knew that it had no real content to it, but I discovered that it was commissioned by the Russian secret police in 1902 as a way to manipulate a Tsar who was just sort of easily manipulatable. And so this was a way to use an existing enemy, being the Jews. There was already anti-Semitism in that culture. And it was a way to say, well, let's create a common enemy to to consolidate power. But the book is actually a plagiarism of another book that has nothing to do at all with anti-Semitism. So there's a really long and convoluted history to it. What I'm interested in the book is how it's continued to live on and on. And so I took on this project as a way to sort of go underneath the text, because it's been disproved by historians and journalists and judges so many times and in so many ways. I am not a historian, I'm not a journalist, I'm not a judge. I wanted to approach this as a poet. And I think what artists do is we sort of go inside things and then find our way through them into something new. So I'm not really trying to disprove the premise of the text, which, by the way, is that every anti-Semitic trope you've ever heard stems from this book, every single one. A lot of people don't necessarily know the source text, but they know the ideas in it because they are just part of the culture. So erasure poetry was my approach to this. And erasure poetry is an existing form. It's not something I created. It's been done many times. But it's often, not always, but it's often something that a poet will do to a text that she wants to undo, wants to destroy in a way. Because I think it's a fairly violent thing to do to a text. You're not taking it and turning it into, gently decoding it. You're actually, as you can see here, blacking out big portions of it and sort of picking it apart. So the process of erasure, what you see on the far side there is the circulation card for the version of the protocols that I used. My original plan was to take out a copy of the protocols from a public library, completely deface it, and then return it to circulation. I couldn't find one in a public library anywhere near Portland, Oregon, which is probably good and probably not that surprising. But what I could find was one online in, a fraction of a second. So I found one online, I printed it out, and the copy that I found online was from the University of Illinois, Champaign-Urbana, and it had been in circulation until at least 2010, which is when you can see it was last checked out. So what you're seeing there is the circulation card from that copy, and then what you're seeing in the middle is me starting the project, very neatly blacking out portions of the text, and then what you're seeing here is the poem that resulted from the words that survived the redaction. And you can see that they're all in the same place. I'm not adding anything. The entire book was made that way. So this is the title page. That image also appears on the cover, which I just learned a lot about that image, and maybe we'll hear more about it later. But you can see in this image exactly how much I'm taking out. So this project was really how do I bring spaciousness into this thing that is so stuck, so full of stuck hatred. So I didn't really realize how much I'd be removing, but I ended up removing a huge amount. And the poems, as you can see, are really spacious, really sparse. And for me, that allowed in a completely different meaning. It allowed me to find ideas in the text that were not intended by the plagiarists who made it. I'm showing you this page just to show you how frequently the word power occurs in this source text. Every single page in this source text had the word power dozens of times. And so it wasn't like I had to search for the theme. It was within the first few pages, it was okay, what this book is really trying to do, more than even create hatred, is it's trying to give the reader power. It's saying, hey, reader, you feel powerless. You don't understand the world. The world's really confusing. Here's a way that you can feel powerful. And so and I think that's what conspiracy theories in general are trying to do. I think that's what we're seeing happen a lot right now in our culture. So what I was trying to do in the redactions that I was making was really think about other forms of power. How can power not be something that's used to oppress and to control, but how can it be something that is generative and regenerative and shared? Somewhere around the middle of the project, I felt like I couldn't keep doing it. It was COVID times. I was waking up every morning and facing this just hateful screed. And besides being a hateful screed, it's also abysmally written. I think because it's been translated and retranslated so many times, the writing is just so bad. So it was like insult and injury. And I just felt like I couldn't keep doing it. And so I made a deal with myself that I wasn't going to break the rules of the erasure. I wasn't going to start adding words, but I allowed myself to play with the form. So what you see here is towards the end of the book, and I'll read this poem in a little bit. And obviously the shape that you see there is not the placement of the words in the original document. And because I think visually often, giving myself that freedom was what I needed to keep doing it. So if you read the book, that decision happens about midway, and you'll notice a change in the way the poems look. So I approached the project. I'm going to back up for a second. I approached the project as part of a fellowship, which I had a sort of light bulb moment where I realized not everybody knew about this text. I sort of assumed everybody knew about it because I knew about it, but I was part of a group of artists and really, curious, educated, interested people, and nobody else in this group had ever heard of this text. And there's a longer story there, but that was sort of a light bulb moment for me where I was like, okay, I would like to find a way to bring this text into view, because I think if people understand better the origins of these ideas, then maybe it will decrease the power of the ideas. And I knew that I had a personal connection to the text, but I didn't realize how personal the project was going to become, which is, I think, a lot of times what artists do is we like sort of trick ourselves into doing things and not realizing that we're going like straight into the center of our broken hearts. And like, if we realize that at the outset, nobody would make the work that we make because it's sort of brutal. What you're seeing here is a family tree on my maternal side, and all of the red X's are people who were killed in concentration camps. So really, and I don't have the paternal side family tree. Both of my parents are here tonight. So, hi, Mom and Dad. So, I would show you the paternal side as well, which is similar looking, but I don't have it. But there's a lot, most of my family was murdered in concentration camps, is the short story. This is a really embarrassing photo that I have not shown in other talks, but I wanted to show tonight because my parents are here. And I wanted to show, this is my bat mitzvah, by the way. I look so awkward. I wanted to show it because it shows both sides of my family. It shows my paternal grandparents and my Uncle Mike, and then my maternal grandparents, my brothers, and my parents. And, I want to show this also because we did live on. Like, this isn't a story just of death and destruction. Like, there's a culture that lives on, and I want to make that clear. But there's also an inheritance that doesn't go away easily. And I felt like I was reckoning with that inheritance. Specifically, I felt like I was reckoning with my mom's mom, Rosalie. She's in the center here as a young woman, far younger than I am now. I imagine she's in her 20s here. This is before Auschwitz, and those are her parents on either side of her. Rosalie was a poet. She and I were, I was always told when I was young that we're spitting images of each other, which confused me a little as a child because I looked like a child and she looked like an old lady. But we really are like spitting images of each other. And I always felt a connection with her that I think ran deeper than I understood, until I started to feel a bit haunted by Rosalie. And I don't have a better word for it than I sort of was having these feelings that I was experiencing her memories, and they felt like my memories. They felt like they had the emotional weight of my memories, but I knew I hadn't lived them. And I didn't really know what to do with that. It was confusing, it was disconcerting, it was overwhelming, it was scary, it was sad. And all I knew that I had to do something artistic with it, and I didn't know what. So I just started to sort of blindly follow these threads, and the threads took me to Cluj. This is where my mom was born and grew up for the first several years of her life. This is a town in Romania. This is where Rosalie lived for a good chunk of her life. It's a beautiful little city, as you can see. And I had never been to this part of the world before. And it was a really strange experience because I was wandering around this beautiful city in spring and, drinking wine at 3 p.m. on cobblestone sidewalks and having a grand time. And I was also looking at this. And I was looking at this. That pink apartment is, I'm pretty sure, where Rosalie lived before being taken to Auschwitz. I don't know for sure, but having talked to various family members and traced records, I think that's where she lived. And so I spent a lot of time standing across the street. It's now a busy street, thinking about this spot and just sort of trying to understand where to go from there. What ended up happening was that I went back to Eastern Europe the following year. I was invited there as part of a a Jewish arts festival that occurs there every June in Krakow, Poland. And the project that I proposed was to go to a former concentration camp outside of Krakow, which is now just sort of a bunch of fields, or at the time it's changed now, but it was just sort of like an abandoned green space. And so there were all these weeds in this abandoned green space. And I was there in June, so all of these weeds were blooming. And what you're looking at here is all of the pigments that I made from this former concentration camp. I'm fairly sure that all 4 of my grandparents were in this camp, just based on how transit occurred. It would have made sense that they would have, all 4 of them would have been here at some point. So I spent a lot of time wandering around this place, picking weeds and making paint. And this is what those paints look like in their dry form. And I think of each of these colors as a memory of a place, a memory of a culture, perhaps a memory of a person. And I'm showing you this because this book is part of this larger project of making these pigments and paintings from the pigments and then sculptures with the pigments in various ways. I'm just gonna quickly show you the process. This is Coronella coronata. This is a weed in Płaszów. That's the name of the former concentration camp. That's the flowers in a pot. And then this is some of the pigment making process. It's quite a thing to turn flowers into paint. You don't just sort of like cook them up. There's a whole bunch of volcanic reactions that occur, and it's really, there's a lot of drama to it, and a lot of changes occur. This is a little bit more of the process unfolding. These are the pigments being dried and ground up. And then while I was there, I also hosted free pigment making workshops. And the people who showed up were young Poles predominantly, partly because of the language barrier. A lot of older Polish people don't speak English, and I don't speak Polish. But I think also because young Polish people are reckoning with their own difficult inheritances and trying to figure out a way forward in a similarly challenging political situation as we have here. What I want to point out about this picture is how much fun we're having. And this really is like at the heart of this project, is that I have zero interest in reiterating the trauma, none. Like, I don't want to just keep perpetuating the hurt. What I'm trying to do is create something beautiful and life-affirming and giving, and a different form of power from this hurt. And these workshops were so instructive to me in that way, because we really did laugh a lot and we had a lot of fun while making pigments from a former concentration camp. This is the Wisła River, which I combined with this gold pigment, which is what came from the flowers to make paint. So what you see here is flower, dry pigment, and paint. And this gold color from that purple flower, they're nothing alike, right? So when I talk about transformation and like taking something that's horrific and brutal and turning it into something that's beautiful, this is what I'm talking about. And the book is, I hope, also another example of that. So I'm going to read a little bit from the book now. It's a really difficult book to excerpt because it's really all one poem. And I've found that reading excerpts from, half the book is an essay and half the book is a poem. Reading excerpts from the essay is a little bit, it makes a little more sense to hear in this context. So I'm going to read some excerpts from the essay, and then I'm going to read one of the longer poems. I'm driving alone on a dusty, rutted back road in the mountains of eastern Oregon when my momentum is stopped by a pickup truck idling in the middle of the road. A man with a long, arched hunting knife is stooped next to the truck. He glances up, raises a hand to me in quick apology and expression of thanks. He's at the edge of the road, using the tip of his knife to poke at a snake. The knife is burnished steel. I know what's going to happen next, and I don't want to see it happen. So I double over, my face buried in the passenger seat, moaning and cursing. I want to stop this man from chopping off this snake's head. I want to exit the safety of my truck and try to stop this armed man, twice my size, miles from cell service, miles from another human. I recognize this as foolish, so I prioritize my own safety and let the snake be killed, burying my own head as the snake loses hers. When I look up again, the man is dropping 3 limp, heavy sections of snake into a beige plastic grocery bag and climbing back into the truck. He pulls over so I can pass, smiling and waving. I drive by him, stony-faced, not making eye contact, furious and helpless. When I get back to town, I'm having a drink with a friend and I tell him what I saw, knowing he'll share my horror at the snake's pointless death, a creature who was just crossing the dusty road to get to the cool river. My friend's eyes remain impassive as he listens to my story. When I'm done bemoaning the injustice, he tells me that the man was going to eat the snake, that is just what you do when a snake crosses a back road. You chop its head off with a shovel, preferably, or a knife if no shovel is handy, and you fry it up and eat it. Stunned, I ask him if he's ever done that, chopped off a road snake's head, fried up its body, and eaten it. He barks a laugh, as if I've just asked him if he's ever drunk a cup of coffee or eaten a sandwich. Yes, he laughs, of course. He's just as shocked that I haven't. He says fried snake is delicious, recalls the rattlesnake inside his grandmother's house in rural Wyoming and its fate, decapitated, breaded, and fried up for her. My sense of the man on the road shifts. My assumptions topple and shame seeps in. I'm struck again by the profound differences between the worlds that shaped my friend and me, his rural Christian America, my immigrant Jewish Queens. The differences in our histories profoundly alter how we read the world and how it reads us. I'm reminded again that I grew up in a culture that is as unintelligible to most Americans as the man snake killing was to me. Carl Jung believed that what is left unconscious will be experienced as fate. He wrote, "I feel very strongly that I am under the influence of things or questions which were left incomplete and unanswered by my parents and grandparents and more distant ancestors. It has always seemed to me I had to complete or perhaps continue things which previous ages had left unfinished." Brandon Shimoda writes, "The ancestors are always arranging, the hands reaching from all generations to locate me in a body that is also theirs." In Jewish mysticism, everything in the world is yesh, which Rabbi Lawrence Kushner describes as isness, beingness, anything that has a beginning or an end, that has spatial coordinates, that has a definition, that's bordered by other things. And it's not just material reality. Love has a beginning, it has an end. You and I are yesh, everything is yesh. There's only one thing in the entire universe that's not yesh. It has no beginning, it has no end, it's not bordered by anything. It has no definition, it has no spatial coordinates. This is Ayin Sof, which literally translates as unending or endless, but is often translated as nothing or nothing with a capital N. God is nothing, non-yesh, defined by simultaneous absence and presence, a void. Near the end of her life, Rosalie was interviewed as part of a nationwide effort to document the stories of Holocaust survivors. At the end of the interview, she is given the opportunity to read one of her poems. Reading the poem makes her cry. the only point in the interview during which she shows overt emotion. After the poem is finished, the interviewer asks her when she wrote the poem. Rosalie, I went out to the bathroom during the night in Auschwitz, and I stood there and I wrote my poems. They catch me once in the bathroom. The guard took the poem away from me. Can you imagine what I went through? I was ready to die. Interviewer, did you save the poems? Rosalie, I saved the poems in my head until I went to the hospital, and there I wrote everything over and tried to make it better. I had in my brain everything what I wrote, and when I went to the hospital, I wrote over again. Poetry is not a way to complicate language. A good poem doesn't make itself intentionally inaccessible. Poetry is a way to allow language to hold things that language otherwise cannot hold. Some things can only be said in fragments, surrounded by silence, absence, void. A poem tries to pry open the yesh of language to allow in the Ayin Sof. A poem is a reckless, deliberate, interdimensional act, a finely tuned, lunatic gamble. Care is infinitely messier and harder than a calcified belief system which obviates the need to care. How might we care? How to not be history's accomplice? How to, in the words of Simone Weil, never react to an evil in such a way as to augment it? Language is a body that has recesses, pits of muscle memory where, like any body, it can't help but recall. I tried to extract the mute glimmers, to give them a new, spacious body through which to speak. In the wilderness where I'd met the man and the snake, the desert rocks around me were orange, brown, and pink, ossified skin compressed by time and light. It was sunset, but I was restless, so I parked and hiked a few fast miles to the remains of ancient homes. Built of rough rectangles of chipped, ruddy stone stacked against the caves, the bygone dwellings perched atop the cliffs, overlooking rolling juniper valleys. All the homes are oriented towards one large, deep blue, triangle-shaped hill over which the sun was rapidly setting, a blazing orange circle against the peak's angular blue. The dwellings, the mountain, the sunset, the hill, my body, the shifting colors, the petroleum fueling my truck, transience and permanence. Though I just sat a long time not wanting to write that last word, because what is permanent? Ayin Sof, perhaps, and perhaps the dark light of horror that continues to move without limit or scope. The earth erodes, preserves some vague concavities. The earth, you and I, are the force of nothingness amplified to form, absence as presence. Whatever truth finds life is fast, as in fleeting, as in indelible. These minutes were stealthily removed from a large symbolic serpent. My friend found them in the large symbolic serpent. The body of the serpent is made of safe facts, brutish schemes, slyness, and spiritual corruption, masquerading as history. Secret, secret serpent, you know nothing because you are nothing, but the minds of those who made you always knew the map of power, 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 power has no apparent plan. always knew that it's a short distance from fact to a system that keeps the mask indulging fact, that keeps power seeming like a super secret mode kept in strict isolation to keep its secret serpent head curving toward its own secret tail, a round devour. Secret serpent, secret, secret serpent, oh, your decoy heart, made by brutes, always ready to return to the low, closed map they've made of you, always ready to encompass and chain and circle your mosaic of blind eyes, to make of you a secluded universe, to screen power from apparent reach, to keep your head indivisible from your tail. In this system, a circle is a conversion. It can't move. It can't ask. So the serpent, obedient, instilled, traverses the earth, driven by the extent of its apparent purpose, its intensified reign, an unlimited lever of power. The serpent passes over its course, cleverly converting all material life, light, beasts, storms, bloodhounds, whole herds of mysteries to gold, all to gold. So now, possession and order, now an army of unregenerate reason, now the useful appearance of hatred, independent of fact. Now, a system of power rushing with stupendous rapidity across the earth. Dissensions, wars, rumors, famines, epidemics, earthquakes cannot disrupt, consciously or unconsciously, its very useful control. Bloodborne. Bloodborne? Ears to hear, eyes to see, eyes to storm, ears to chain, hands to pay, hands to prove, hands to heart, hands to eyes, hands to ears, blood to heart, blood to storm. Is the form of existence unlimited freedom, or is the form of existence stupendous suffering? Is the end the same? Certain light, certain reveal of lost form, certain unlimited freedom. Finally, bonds, belongings, time, labor, history, body, all material life forgiven. Really, really, a heart can enter history, or a body as accomplished fact. It can lose count of its debts, be indebted only to its eyes and its ears, independent of any properties or leaders, independent of humanity, our quarrels, debts, and doubts. A worthy mob of consciousness lives inside material life, has its own history, its own blood. It's a secret as open as the hand, the hour, the day. The extent of nothing is the extent of now. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. I'm excited to be doing this event with Daniela, mostly because 4 or 5 people from different areas of my life contacted me when her book came out and was like, have you seen this book? You need to get this book. You should do an event with Daniela. So I was like, okay, it's Bashir. We need to do this event. But then we discovered that we basically have a lot of family background similarity. We both grew up in Queens. My father actually grew up in Forest Hills, which is the part of Queens Daniela grew up in. I'm also first-generation American. My grandparents also survived concentration camps. And my father was born in Haifa in 1947 from the half of my family that fled and made it out. So Daniela and I decided it would be a great idea to meet at the Anne Frank exhibit earlier this afternoon for the first time, which maybe we'll talk about in conversation. But I'm just going to read a couple of poems that I think are in conversation with her work a little bit, and then we're going to have a conversation about her work. And I told her I would bring Holocaust poem levity. So these are my lighter Holocaust poems. And the only thing you need to know about this poem is if you've ever been through the Midwest, the gas station chain Come and Go, K-U-M and Go, makes an appearance in this poem. So that's my 13-year-old boy coming out of me. Further experiments in remote embodiment. My friend on a trip to Groningen sends a photo of the old synagogue there, still standing, though most of the city's Jews were deported during the war and only 10 survived. His caption, I turned down an alley and right next to it was the red light district, sex and death and faith. Proximity creates an intimate subjectivity where the body is a site of resistance, or the physical body simply loses importance. Which is it? I couldn't make out all the Hebrew painted in gold over those synagogue doors, but the arc of letters started with "Blessed are you." The mystical sages believed the Torah's letters were black fire, dancing tongues of flame that lick our souls, or whatever other parts might need some attention, a living calligraphic mashup of desire and revelation. I texted the picture to my sister, the rabbi, who answered Deuteronomy 28:6. Blessed are you in your comings, blessed are you in your goings. And for a moment, I felt not necessarily blessed, but fortunate to have a sister I could text about this, and our mother's possible dementia. And yes, I also sent a joke about the gas station chain Come and Go, with its snappy red and white logo. And here is the way we regularly cross thresholds, fall into a limbo between our past and present modes of everyday existence, this glowing machine in our hands. Some Deuteronomy translations offer future tense of that verse. You will be blessed. Blessed shall you be. And this idea of a future that's not crisis seems entirely situated in the realm of soothsayers or wishful thinkers or visionary artists other than me, who use imagination, which is another kind of faith. I am alarmist about predictive text, which is not the same as fixed liturgy. The machine can't possibly know what comes next. The ancestors strived so hard for consistency, made it tradition, so I learned the choreography, 3 steps forward, 3 steps back, bowing, swaying, raising myself up, walking through the doorway of any place that insists we're in the presence of the divine, or at least really goddamn trying, that insists there's a blessing on my head, whether I'm leaving or arriving. So I managed to only print out the first pages of some of my poems, so I'm going to read one from my phone. This is about my grandparents, who used to go to a beach club called Silver Point out near Howard Beach in Queens. So, and it starts in Forest Hills. Cabana. They went there to escape the searing summer heat radiating off city sidewalks, the endless traffic of Queens Boulevard that almost sounded like ocean, the hot breath of the E and F puffing through metal grates near their tiny rent-controlled apartment. Even after Opa tremored with Parkinson's, Oma drove his electric blue GTO, heavy on the brakes down Nassau Expressway, to Silver Point, Atlantic Beach's largest and most affordable beach club, Opa holding Oma's elbow down the boardwalk to their 8x8 cabana, padlocked double wood doors unbolted for entry, and ocean breezes with a cold water only shower and changing room in the back, where we'd rustle into our suits, a fridge, 2 benches, a table for lunch, and cards. Always the cards and kerchiefs and cigarettes and hats and plastic pitchers of iced tea from Powder, Mix, snippets of German, Oma's red lacquered nails, and paper plates, and after lunch, they'd drag their squat, folding beach chairs outside, have a cabana boy jam flimsy striped umbrellas into the sand next to Fritz and Perla, Carl and Iris, Elsa and Leo, all the old country friends with flip-down sunglasses, plastic nose shields, plaid shorts, torpedo bra swimsuits, sagging skin gold high medallions, black tire tread sandals, often with socks, sweating bottles of Pilsner or Kell at their feet, my grandparents and their friends, what we'd now call chosen family, persecuted, relocated, fleeing, fled, resettled, and settled again in the deep shadows of loss, parents, home, languages, siblings, inheritances, livelihoods, everything wiped out, with their slice of Atlantic tucked between rows of cabanas, all the doors thrown open to the ocean, their faces tilted towards each other, their faces laughing in the sun. So I'm just going to read one more, which is a sort of eco-apocalypse Holocaust poem that starts off in the national parks. If you have a fourth grader, there's still a program under Obama that I think no one knows about that they haven't cut yet, that when the parks were open before the shutdown, gave you a free pass to all the parks in the country. So if you can borrow or kidnap a fourth grader, I highly recommend it. No one should kidnap anyone. Manifesto of Fragility, Terraform. In the Grand Tetons on the shores of Jenny Lake, a ranger is giving a talk. You can gently feel and bond with a lichen. She is stroking the side of a tree trunk. The little things in our ecosystem, she says. And these days our ecosystem is basically a Yiddish resistance song. Wir werden sie überleben. We will outlive them. Since there are critically endangered orcas harassing ships, biting at rudders, and even sinking yachts off the Iberian coast. Scientists shun the word attack for these encounters, claim it's not aggression, but most likely the killer whales playing, finding pleasure, like the female sea otter in Santa Cruz accosting surfers, committing longboard larceny. The otter was shredding, caught a couple of nice waves, said a 16-year-old dude, whose board was commandeered by the otter at Cowell's Beach. Multiple attempts have been made to capture her, none successful. And in the Netherlands, magpies and crows are turning hostile architecture into homes, constructing cyberpunk nests from anti-bird spikes, strips of sharp metal pins meant to keep them from perching on buildings. I'm definitely rooting for the birds. They're fighting back a bit, said the Dutch biologist studying the phenomenon. Never mind the record wildfire season in Canada that made the weather forecast on my phone, no matter what state I was in, just smoke. The unprecedented heat domes across the US all summer, the ocean in Miami at 100 degrees sparking coral reef bleaching and a massive die-off. Before we went out west, every night I walked a path around Tiedeman's Pond, getting dive-bombed by red-winged blackbirds, which is so common during nesting season, the local paper offers advice. Make eye contact, run for cover, wear a hat or a bike helmet when you go out on foot. The ranger is still talking about lichen. They colonize harsh environments, infiltrate and wedge apart pieces of rock, serve as food in times of stress for mammals, including humans. Birds use lichen for nest building. Lichen are possibly the oldest living things on Earth. We will outlive them. Wir werden sie überleben. The Jews who made up that resistance song on the spot were Polish, murdered by the SS in Lublin in 1939, ordered to sing to their own execution. They all died against barbed wire, but their song lived on. And in the prairie restoration area, despite the drought, despite the shrinking footprint of the pond, the ground is still bursting with a riot of purple and yellow and white, cup plants, plume thistles, bee balms, and bergamots. Resistance is struggle against impossible circumstance, refusal, the will to survive in the face of annihilation. It can also be the surviving remnant enacting revenge. The dictionary offers sample sentences. They have shown a stubborn resistance to change. Government forces were unable to crush the resistance. The troops met heavy resistance as they approached the city. He went underground and joined the resistance. In the story about the Jews of Lublin, no one sang until one person began. Thank you. I have some questions for you, and then we can open it up to the audience for everything you were dying to know about protocols. Let me just get out my sheet. So I was hoping you could talk a little bit. What struck me about your presentation, because I think you covered a lot of the things I wanted to ask you, is this idea of perseverance. So as a poet who does not do visual art, it would never dawn on me to persevere and keep going with a text that was like torture in creating work about it. And it seems to me like a very visual artist thing to do. Like this idea of like, I must go on, so I will make a deal with myself. So I'm curious if you could talk a little bit about two things. One is like, what made this text so important to you that you felt like you had to persevere through finishing this project when it was clearly torturous for you? And like, can you talk a little bit about that particular impulse, which is strange to me, frankly.
Yeah.
So I'm curious about it.
I'm incredibly stubborn. My parents can validate that. I'm incredibly stubborn, and when I start something, I will finish it. Like, come hell or high water, I will finish it. Although I'm trying to check that impulse in myself as I get older. Like, I don't need to finish the book I'm not enjoying reading. I don't, but that's part of it. Is I don't know if it's a visual artist thing. I think it's maybe partly I'm used to things feeling really hard in my creative life. Like, I have moments in all the things I make that feel great, that feel beyond great, that feel like completely amazing, and like I'm doing something that is like the pinnacle of the human experience. And then I have a lot of moments in between that is just slogging through what feels like I don't know what I'm doing, I don't know why I'm doing it. There's a tremendous amount of slog to get to the points where I feel like really good about what's happening. And then there are moments in between that are somewhere between those two poles. But I think that is what kept me going. I also, there was a few things. I started the project as part of that fellowship that I mentioned, which was sponsored by the Western States Center, which has this sort of like this name that doesn't say anything about what they actually do, but it's this really unique organization that looks at the intersection between anti-Semitism, racism, and anti-democracy forces. And so this fellowship was based on looking at that triumvirate and how they often meet. And they're meeting in many ways right now. They were meeting in very many ways in 2021 when I began that fellowship. And we were looking at Poland as an example. So I received, support from them for that project, and then I was receiving support from another organization for the project. So there was also this sense that I owed these people something. and on a personal level, it was the feeling that I talked about in the presentation of like, I felt like I needed to keep going because I needed to figure out what was being asked of me on this other level that I didn't understand. But I could feel that what I was doing mattered in some way. Like the feeling of these memories that were not my own, it started to calm down the more I worked on it. So that was also part of the perseverance.
Sounds like a haunting almost.
I mean, I use the word haunting, and I use the word haunting very reluctantly because I think it brings up these images and these connotations that I'm not really comfortable with. But that's probably the most descriptive word.
I'm like not woo at all, and it sounds like a haunting to me. I'm curious what it or if you could talk a little bit about what it means to drag this text into this particular socio-historic moment that we're in right now, like as it's evolving.
Yeah, well, as you mentioned, we thought it would be fun and relaxing to start at an Anne Frank exhibit. And it was a worthwhile exhibit. I encourage you all to see it. But the exhibit started, and we both commented on how we appreciated this. A big chunk of the exhibit is dedicated to describing in pretty extensive detail, like how things came to be, what happened.
How the Frank family ended up in the attic.
Right.
Yeah.
How they ended up in the attic in a society that wouldn't have seemed possible like a few decades prior. So the thing that we both noticed is that you would need to be living under a rock to not listen to that history and think about right now, which is terrifying. It's also unavoidably true. And so bringing this work into this moment, which is also a moment in which anti-Semitism is an extremely complicated word at the moment, and it's being used as a cudgel for other things so it's a really, books take a long time to make. So when I was writing the book, it was a different world. And when I realized when this book was actually going to be released, I was incredibly scared, frankly. I was just like, the context that the book is going into is not the context in which it was written. I've been grateful that the reception of it, at least what I've heard directly from people and the things that have been said publicly, seem to acknowledge that the content of the book is really looking at these truths that are both pertinent to our moment and are just like truths about life and about what it means to be alive. And a lot of them really deal, I'm glad you read that last poem, because a lot of what the ways that I ended up thinking about power were in this sort of like earthly sense, like this way that, the earth is a source of power. And so there's clearly it's a political book, and clearly it's a personal book. And it's also a book that's really sort of much larger than any of those things.
I'm curious too, because we have similar family backgrounds, and we talked about this a little bit outside the Anne Frank exhibit, just about our grandparents' responses to the Holocaust for the most part was to like not talk about it. And there was this deep silence. And for me, the way into those experiences was through the literature I read. So I had been saying to you that the Diary of Anne Frank was really like one of my first experiences of like, what is this thing called the Holocaust? Mm-hmm. Because my grandmother had even told me the numbers on her arm were like her phone number tattooed there so she wouldn't forget it. But I think that speaks to like this drive that our grandparents wanted us to have normal lives. They didn't want us to be like dragging this trauma behind us. And so I'm wondering if you could speak a little bit about that tension. Like it strikes me in what you're saying of like, I made this text because I wanted to make something good out of the trauma and not be dragging it around. And I think very much as someone who's in a helping profession and also an artist, like, and you are too, it's a push against that hypervigilance that I was very much raised with, which is like, the world is a terrible place and everyone's out to get you. And to be a practicing artist, there's a certain openness you need towards the world. So I'm wondering if you could talk a little bit about that, maybe that tension and family history as it moves through your whole artistic practice.
Yeah, it's a great question and a big one. And I think that, I mean, my grandparents didn't really talk about it. Rosalie sometimes tried to, but it was, there was not a ton of receptivity to it. There was a little bit of, I understood that what had occurred. There was enough. It wasn't like your grandmother denying or, trying to, I don't mean denying in a negative way. She was trying to protect you. Like, I understood more than that. And I do think that the desire to not talk about it very much, or not talk about it very much around children, is a good thing. I mean, they were trying to protect us, but I think it's just the way that these inheritances work that you can't undo them unless you consciously undo them. And I remember, when I started talking about this and writing about this, frankly, it was the last thing I wanted to do. I did not want to go into this at all. Like, I really didn't want to write this book. It was not something I set out to do. I felt like I couldn't keep going with my life without doing it. And I can say that it's completely remarkable to me that I can say this, but I can say that having gone into it, like deeper into all of that pain, I do feel like I've actually come out the other side. And it's an interesting thing because now I'm like, well, there's been this force that's been driving my artistic practice for my entire adult life that I didn't quite understand. And then once I understood what was driving it and I went straight to it, which took years to convince myself to do, then I came out the other end. And now I'm like, okay, so that force is no longer like the fire under me. So now I'm at this point in my creative life where I'm like, well, what else now? And it's both incredibly liberating. Like, I feel so much better than I think I've ever felt in my entire adult life. And it's also an interesting conundrum creatively. I think also the sort of rawness that you talked about, that's a prerequisite for making art, it's both a liability and a gift. And it's something that I need to consciously maintain every single day because there's so many ways in which the world punishes you for it. And I hold on to it stubbornly again because I feel like the benefits outweigh the damage. But there is a lot of there's a lot of ways in which maintaining that vulnerability is it's becoming increasingly hard in our world, I will say.
Thank you. I think that's a good time to see if anyone from the audience has questions for Daniela.
Can you just tell us a bit about your grandmother's poetry?
Yeah. My mom translated her poetry into English right before she died. So it was like 99, 98, something like that. Late 90s, mid 90s. And so I have a copy. She wrote mostly in Romanian. I have a copy of those poems that was translated into English. My mom, by her own admission, will say that she's not a poet. So, and she's a writer, however. So I received these translations that I was so grateful to receive, and I didn't quite understand how amazing a gift it was until many years after I received them. But then I've never published these, but I went back into the original Romanian and retranslated the poems using Google Translate. And those poems felt to me like I was collaborating with her. And I think if we are going to talk about it as a haunting, I think that's how I was letting her in unconsciously. Because I rewrote all the poems sort of like not as direct translations, but as these very loose rewritings. Her poems are very simple. She had a 6th grade education, predominantly because of anti-Semitism and poverty. So her poetry, I would not say is like very accomplished from like an artistic perspective, but it's heartfelt. and it's full of the incredibly difficult things that she endured in her life, which were multiple, and her passion and her incredibly strong will to live comes out in the poems. Yeah.
Other questions?
When you just, oh, do I need to use them? I don't like that. When you just said in the middle of sitting there and having to deal with the friction and tension of moving forward and figure out what was being asked of you, do you have a way that you articulated what was being asked of you? Did that channel, like, and or in the end, have you distilled what, like in terms of dragging around the trauma, have you distilled in the end what the beauty is, or like within us, you know?
I think what was being asked of me was, it's hard to sum up, but I love the question. But I think what was being asked of me was that I think that what inherited trauma requires, and I think we all have some version of inherited trauma. I don't think it's unique to me or to Erika. It's like we all have some difficult history that we've inherited of varying degrees and types. What I think it was requiring of me or asking of me was that I go straight towards it, and that I like go into the lion pit, you know, and like just not, you know, not try to avoid it or skirt around it, which is I think what I'd been doing for my entire creative life, not consciously. So for me, like going to Cluj was a first step. Retranslating her poems was probably a first step. The practice of making pigments is a transformative practice on multiple levels. So those pigments, that's an ongoing project. I'll have a exhibition of that work in 2027. So like I'm not done with that process, but I do feel like all of it combined has led me towards something that allows me to express a different story, which is really what I've been trying to do.
And just real quick, I'll re-quote you because you kind of, the question was almost to affirm, you said in the center of this talk that when you said that it was, that at some point we all just have to go to the center of our broken heart.
Yeah. Yeah. Thanks.
I feel like that's a good place to call us on Daniela's line. Oh, one more.
Just a quick question. Do you ever think what happened to the text after you extracted all those words into your poem? Conceptual, what do you think happened to the original text?
Like, did the poem that I created impact the original text at all?
No. What do you think happened to original? Because you created something new out of like technical text. It's protocol. It's a technical term, right? It's not a poetry. It's not an essay. It's like it's a manual that was created by the Tsarist regime. But what do you think, as an artist, what do you think happened to the original text after you after you took out some important words for you, and you basically stripped down the text, or maybe you killed it, or what do you think happened to it?
I wish I could say I killed it. Yeah, no, I get it. It's a great question. I mean, I didn't kill it. It's still in circulation widely. I think that maybe what I've done is draw attention to its existence. It's still in the news frequently. Like, it's still one of RFK's funders, one of his primary funders has very recently come out publicly saying that he believes in the Protocols of the Elders of Zion, and then he renounced it, and but it's not like it hasn't gone anywhere. So I think that what I did was draw attention to the source text's existence, which, as I said, is the source of every single anti-Semitic idea is in that text. And I'm hopeful that if more people understand the source, that it'll, take some of the power away from those beliefs, which are really prevalent right now. I think that the crossed out or blacked out, or sometimes I use paint on the pages, like those words, that PDF, I still have it. It's like this big, thick sheaf of paper. And from an artistic perspective, I look at those pages and I think one day I'll probably make something from them that's a visual work. Yeah, right. There's a positive and negative there that's interesting to look at. So I don't know that I'll go back into that immediately. I think I need a little break, but I do think that there's a way in which I want, and I think this is evident from the way the poems look on the page, there's a way in which I want them to be read visually, not for meaning the way that we typically read text. And so making visual work from it might support that goal.
Thank you. I'm going to turn it back over to Tom to tell us about the books in the back. And
Thank you both for a poignant and conversation and reading and presentation. And thank you all for being here. We have Daniela's book and other books that we've published in the back. Daniela will be signing books, and we're going to be hanging and talking, and may the conversation continue. Thanks again for coming, and have a great night.